In some games, you just want to flex on other players. So like unlockable cosmetics or equipment that just lets everyone know how good or dedicated you are to a game. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 unlocks you got for being a total boss in video games. Starting off at number 10, it's the Recon Armor from Halo 3. So, we can't have a list like this without mentioning one of the famous, most difficult to get pieces of armor from a Halo game. That would be irresponsible, and we're anything but that. Now, it's not something particularly impressive to show off anymore, because Bungie eventually made it so Recon Armor can be unlocked by default for everyone, but before that, this armor was the ultimate expression of skill in a Halo game. The Recon Armor was originally given out by Bungie to Halo 3 players who kind of impressed them. Like, just if they did something that was impressive, like beating a team of Bungie employees and matchmaking or something like that. Suffice to say, it was rare, at least at first. Later on, they introduced a set of Vidmaster challenges to the game, which if you managed to complete them all, you did get the armor, so it was a little more automatic. But it was still a lot. Like, these challenges were ridiculous. Like the annual challenge that tasked players with beating the final level in Halo 3 on Legendary, with 4 players using Iron Skull and everyone using Ghosts. If you don't know, Iron Skull basically makes it so if any one player dies, even if you're playing co-op, then the mission starts over from the beginning. Oh, it's brutal. That's one of the worst, but they're almost all pretty hard. There's one where you have to beat a campaign level solo in Halo ODST without shooting or throwing a grenade at all. They also make special mention that power sliding and honking the horn on a vehicle also counts as shooting. So you do either of those things, you're disqualified too. They're just joking around at this point, but still it's nuts. Once 343 took over the Halo franchise, everyone got a free set of Recon Armor, so it's not exactly much to brag about anymore, but for a while there, if you wore Recon Armor, you were basically like a huge badass. At number 9 is the Tractor from GTA Online. There aren't really a lot of flex items to have in GTA Online anymore. Pretty much everything goes on sale eventually, so even the most cash-starved regular player can get most of the things they want in a game as long as they're looking out for the deals. So there aren't a lot of cars, businesses, or really anything else that you can have that really shows off how good in the game you are, except for this rusty old Tractor. Don't mess with somebody you see rolling around in this thing, because it's an indication they are a master. Released back in 2018, the Arena War added a huge selection of missions you can play in the Maze Bank Arena in Los Santos. As you play through these missions, you increase your sponsorship tier, and guess what you get for getting all the way to tier 1000? Yeah, a Tractor. It takes a hell of a lot of Arena Wars to get there. Like, the previous reward was earned all the way back at tier 500, so that's another 500 ranks just to unlock this piece of, like, junk. It's obviously a big joke. You get probably one of the most useless vehicles ever for completing a literal ton of vehicle-based missions, but it's a unique vehicle, and it's proof. And number 8 is the Prophetic Visionary from Destiny 2. A ton of stuff that you can get in Destiny 2 is, like, primarily if your main goal is showing off. So much so that nobody really can agree on what the ultimate flex item is in the game. There's plenty to choose from if you're looking for it, but for the purposes of this list, I think the Prophetic Visionary is probably the best example. It's an emblem you can earn by completing the Prophecy Dungeon solo, and also flawlessly, so should come as no surprise that it is incredibly difficult. Normally, it's meant for 3 players, so the Prophecy Dungeon was added to Destiny 2 with the Season of Rivals, and the dungeon includes all these puzzle-like elements and challenges that make it really tough to finish, even with that full-player team. So trying to beat it by yourself, it's tough enough. Now, just beating the dungeon, however, isn't enough for this emblem. You have to do it flawless, like I said, meaning you cannot die a single time. The whole dungeon revolves around the gimmick of collecting and dunking motes of light and motes of dark, so having to do all this stuff solo, it's like the worst of both worlds. It's not just hard, it's also, wow, way more tedious, as if it wasn't tedious enough with 3 players. Now, if you manage to do it though, you get an emblem that's proof of how good of a Destiny 2 player you really are, and also what you're willing to go through. At number 7 is Ultimate Raid Weapons from Final Fantasy XIV. So Final Fantasy XIV is an MMO, so one of its key features is, of course, raids. Now, if you're not big on MMOs, that's a large-scale dungeon that requires multiple players to work cooperatively to finish. You got standard raids, you got savage raids, which are usually harder versions of those raids, and then finally there's ultimate raids, which take these already pretty tough cooperative challenges to the next level. Introduced in the Stormblood expansion, these 8-player raids are incredibly incredibly tough, requiring a level of coordination and planning that would be tough for just one player. But you gotta do it with 8. And if you die once, you gotta restart. Your reward for actually beating these things, the ultimate raid weapons, they're interesting because they're not actually all that much better than stuff you would normally get in the raid. They're basically just for bragging rights. Anyone who plays a lot of MMOs knows that a big part of the game is showing off all your fancy equipment to other players, and the ultimate expression of that in Final Fantasy XIV is the ultimate raid weapons. They're incredibly hard to get, and while they aren't that good, they're really cool looking, and at the end of the day, that's what really matters, because you're just telling people, hey, look what I did. And number 6 is the Golden Toothpick from Splatoon 2's Octo expansion. This is a unique one. You don't get it for being really good in multiplayer. It's really actually earned for doing something incredibly hard in single player. But you get to wear it and show it off in multiplayer modes, so it still deserves a mention. And to get it, you have to 100% complete the much more difficult Splatoon 2 Octo expansion, and then take on its secret boss, Inner Agent 3. If you're able to beat him, that gets you a Golden Toothpick that you can wear on your head. And it's not a lot to look at, but for players who know, it's gonna gain a little respect. Because seriously, everything in the Octo expansion can be brutally hard. And number 5 is Re-Up Wings from Gears of War 3. Now, this is something that stuck with Gears of War after 3, but introduced in 3, you could reset your multiplayer level back to 1 after hitting 100, the max rank. And every new re-up, the cost of gaining levels would increase, so it would be harder to rank up. And you could only do it 3 times in Gears 3. So if you manage to max out your rank that 3rd time, basically getting rank 400, you'd unlock gold rings, which was as high as you could possibly get. These things were prominently displayed and let everyone in the lobby know that you were a maniac. Basically, it's small and it doesn't actually give you any different kind of power or anything, but it's a real sense of accomplishment. Later games like 4 would make it so you could re-up even more than that, and you wouldn't even start to get wings until after you reset your levels 10 times. And each one would get you a different color set of wings, so the highest rank of wings looked ridiculous, and that's exactly how Gears 5 works too. For old school players though, the golden wings from Gears 3 were the best. They stood out, more people noticed them, and they were really difficult and time consuming to get. Though they weren't basically impossible like later games, and it was something a lot of players really just tried hard to get. So even if it's a lot harder to get your gold wings in Gears 4 and beyond, for a lot of people, it doesn't feel as quite as much of an accomplishment. And number 4 is Bobbin Prime. Most frames in Warframe can be earned eventually. There's not really much you can do in this game that can really put you above everyone else, as most things can either be bought with real world money or just grind it out. Technically, it's possible to grind out this frame as well, but the difference is by how much. Compared to most other frames in the game, the Bobbin Prime is just on a whole different level for grinding. Like, you're required to do so much more. You need 7,000 Oxium, 31,000 alloy plates, 16,000 salvage, and that is a whole lot of stuff for just one frame. Probably the hardest to get stuff is the 20 Nitane extracts, which are these incredibly rare items that either appear in certain missions with single-digit odds of finding them, or very rarely show up as rewards in some mission types every couple weeks. So it's really rare that anyone puts the effort into getting Bobbin Prime. It's something only really dedicated people do, because it's super expensive and very tedious, but it is impressive to show off. And number 3 is the Discontrophy from Super Smash Bros. Melee. You'd think there wouldn't be anything you can unlock that would be all that hardcore in a Smash Bros. Game, and for the most part, you are right about that. There really isn't. For most of these games, unlocking something can be a little difficult or a little time consuming, but doesn't usually go much beyond that. Except this one ridiculous trophy. The Discontrophy, which is based off the Japanese mascot for the Famicom Disk System, is pretty obscure to most American players, but regardless, if you've heard of this guy or not, if you want to get all the trophies in the game, you got to get this guy. To unlock it, all you have to do is get every bonus in the game, which are awards that you get at the end of a match, or even a game for stuff like KOing an opponent with a special weapon or a certain move, like basic stuff. So you wouldn't think this would be a lot of difficulty, but the problem is there's a large amount of them. And some of them are a huge pain, like the no damage clear bonus, which requires you to clear every level without taking even a single hit. So you get hit a single time, that's it, and we're talking multiple stages in a fighting game, which is absolutely nuts, but apparently possible. Not something I have accomplished, and I don't even think I'm gonna attempt that. It's a hell of a lot of work just for a trophy of a mascot that most people in the West probably don't even know existed. But if you want your friends to know that you are a Smash Brothers master, this is what you get. And number 2 is the Fatalist equipment from Monster Hunter World. Few games really allow players to show off as much as Monster Hunter. Showing off a trophy is as easy as holding a weapon or wearing a suit of armor, because this franchise is literally all about defeating monsters, collecting resources, and then making equipment out of that stuff. So you can see how accomplished a hunter is just by looking at them, and the armor they're wearing can tell you what the toughest beast they've beaten is. The hardest creature in Monster Hunter World just so happens to be the last one, Fatalist, the Elder Dragon that you can face after finishing the Iceborne story, is brutally tough and a fight that only the best players will be able to even stand a chance against, and being able to beat it is an incredibly difficult task on its own. Worst part is, if you want to make an entire set of armor from it, you're going to need to take it on multiple times to get all of its drops, so you just have to beat this thing multiple times and make that armor. And at number 1, the One Down Skull from Payday 2, which is a ridiculous game. I mean, there's one mission where you literally rob the White House, but this one mask is one of the most ludicrous things I've seen in a video game. The One Down Skull mask requires you to beat every contract on death sentence difficulty with the One Down mechanic activated. So trying to beat a heist on death sentence, highest difficulty in the game, already a painful experience that requires near perfect coordination. You need to know the missions inside and out, know ahead of time what the best builds are, and execute your plans flawlessly. But with the One Down mechanic enabled, you can't make any mistakes because it's exactly what it sounds like. If you go down one time, you are dead. It's hard enough pulling this off for one mission, but if you want this special mask, you have to do it on every mission. There's an even worse skull called the Great Immortal Mask, which requires you to finish every in-game achievement, but to get that, you gotta finish this first. Wearing either mask, the One Down Skull or the Great Immortal, shows that you're basically the ultimate Payday 2 master. And considering I'm someone that struggles to finish missions on hard, that's not going to happen for me. That's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable all notifications. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter, Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.